Let's start from scratch, okay? First, we're looking at economic impact, and there are 4 economic impacts. So look at my map before you start. Did I give instructions? Okay, before you start, don't just blindly copy everything down. Try to listen first, and then pause it, then write it without referring. If need to, you go back and refer, because that trains you up. Don't take the lazy method, otherwise the idea is that for you to train your brain to absorb, understand, especially because this is a pretty important topic. Now, let's start from scratch, okay? Standard of living, economic impact, there are 4 main impacts. So first, standard of living, memorize. Second one will be increased competition. Third one will be talent. And fourth one will be widening income gap. So 4 main points. 1, increase in the standard of living. 2, increased competition. 3, talent. And 4 would be your widening income gap. So there are 3 examples to memorize. When there's trade, you increase export markets, you increase revenue. This revenue can be used by the government for education, health, defense, housing, and transport. Some examples are like Singapore also as the individual, where we earn more income from 4940 to 5400. And then of course transnational corporations, when they come and develop countries like India and China, there is a variety of goods. There's a better lifestyle choice when they do come and provide literacy and training. Of course, we say standard of living has improved because now these workers can now command an even higher pay. So very simple. Trade, increase exports market, increase revenue, especially if TNCs come in and develop, okay, create a variety of foreign goods, and then they also train the workers. What this means for the normal man is that they have increased income. What this means for the government is that with the increased income, they can now improve standard of living through defense, housing, and transport. I repeat again, trade, increase export markets and revenue. Transnational corporations who come in also can develop, making sure there are more goods and there are more workers who are trained and skilled. This would mean that they are able to buy more things, and their revenue have also gone up. Okay, and the revenue going up, the government can use it for education, health. So the revenue comes up from exporting things, also from maybe being skilled and trained by the TNCs. So bigger markets and investments equals to higher revenue, higher income. Okay, and of course this can be spent on developing the country and spent on purchasing other goods. This would essentially mean a higher standard of living. That's actually quite simple. Now, secondly, we talked about increased competition. Okay, and I think I want to do this one first. Alright. When we say about increased competition, we're talking about investments and markets, because we want to attract the TNCs, so they compete to do that. So it's like 3 examples is Dalian opening the doors, okay, including tax incentives, and therefore attracting the foreign investors. Singapore and Malaysia's Tanjong Pelapas, which we actually lost one of our major customers to actually Tanjong Pelapang because they offered cheaper rates. And of course, Bangkok Airport and even Hong Kong Airport is now redeveloped to actually compete with Singapore Changi Airport in air traffic terms. So ideas that countries were able to offer incentives are successful. And of course, this is positive because as long as you have good infrastructure able to attract certain incentives, you're able to actually develop the economy. However, there are countries that find it very hard to attract investors because of actually political instability, not just poor infrastructure. And this means that they are trapped there, they can't move forward, and then this of course leads to your widening income gap. So the increased competition can be seen as any competitions, even academic, when someone competes with you, you do even better. On the other hand, sometimes competition can cause someone to drop totally from the scene because they can't compete, it's too much for them. So again, here, increased competition, you need to memorize the 3 examples. So Dalian, they attracting investments, tax incentives, Singapore Port versus Tanjong Pelapas, Bangkok Airport, of course the idea is cheaper rates, facilities as well. So TNCs look for countries for low production costs, depending on incentives. So developing countries with large population base, low costs are attractive, they offer, and these are the methods in which it's done: tax incentives, remittance of profits, examples such as Nokia, Hyundai, they provide, and this is how. So first of all, the countries offer tax incentives and remittance, and then the TNCs would actually come in giving jobs, capital, technology, revenue. such as Suzhou, Wuxi, Dalian, because of this investments from TNCs develop rapidly, so they can sell in larger markets and attract investments. So good infrastructure benefit, political instability, poor infrastructure are trapped. They are unable to keep up with the competition. So good and bad. Okay. Now let's move on. So let's talk about talent next. Okay, but again, let's go on to your school notes first. Now, talent. The idea is that you're able to move from country to country, and of course, if you're highly skilled and high demand, so you don't have the opportunity to move all over the world. In the past, even no matter how highly skilled you were probably stuck in Singapore itself. And of course, an example of this is how 2.5% of the world population is no longer in their own home country. So this is good for receiving countries such as Singapore with shrinking population. We need new talent pool. Okay, but of course it's bad for countries like India, because this would mean that there's brain drain, like India. So they train their workers, educate their people, but the people may move overseas because their country is unable to afford such high pay or employment opportunities. Now, emerging economies, of course, you can still correct that. So this is the good, this is the bad, this is positive, this is negative, and of course this is correcting it. How would you correct it? You can still attract back your skilled workers by basically counter offering. Okay, but of course, and attracting TNCs, of course, if they fail, then that does become a problem. The brain drain continues. So let's go back here. So we're looking at the fact that talent, 3 examples: allow people to move easily, generating competition, 2.5% are there. Okay, and of course, it can also serve to ease brain drain when you attract the TNCs to invest, such as in the IT park. Okay, attracting their nationals who are trained in USA to return to India and recontribute. So there is a solution to it, if you're able to afford it in that sense. Increase in mobility, especially advanced economy, able to attract new talent pool. Developing economy further, that's the impact. However, negative impact is the increase in mobility. Not so advanced economies cannot progress, not enough jobs, and then the economy becomes stagnant. So it's quite simple. Okay. Now let's move on to the very last factor, which is your widening income gap. So, okay, that's the last one first. When we talk about widening income gap, talk about the fact that there's increased gap between the poor and rich countries. Okay, and the reason why is because these developing countries own the manufacturing activities. So for example, even Singapore tried to invest overseas, and own invest in other countries. So when you own the manufacturing activities such as ExxonMobil, British Petroleum, obviously you're going to grow and grow and grow more. You're able to draw investments away from poor areas. Okay, like Singapore, we can afford to lure people away and relocate them. On the other hand, developing countries face trade restrictions. Okay, they're stuck there in a sense because they say that they can't produce better quality goods. They have lowly skilled workers, and the TNCs actually locate labor-intensive operations there, and then they earn all the money, but the poor countries actually are stuck in their poverty cycle. So there's a widening income gap, and the rich continue to prosper with opportunities. The poor still have economic uncertainties. Then there's this increasing tension because they think it's unfair that we're being exploited and you earn more than us. So let's go back to this. So 3 examples. 1, developing countries own the manufacturing activities such as ExxonMobil and British Petroleum. This allows them to industrialize rapidly. 2, they are able to attract investments and the skilled people. This leads to rapid development. 3, whereas yours is widening gap, right? Developing countries have trade restrictions. They lack investment and they are exploited with low value added, labor intensive products. So poor working conditions. Famous examples is Nike and Walmart. They've been exposed for paying very little and making the workers work very long hours, and they earn immense amount of profits are not distributed back to the people. This means that the wealth, actually the country provides the labor and the resources, but the money, the profit actually goes back to the TNC or the country who's investing. So of course, the idea is that sometimes TNCs, as and when they want to, they can also relocate. For instance, if Singapore is no longer attractive, they can relocate to China or India, and then what happens in Singapore is that this will cause massive retrenchment. So TNCs and developing countries have the ability to disrupt a poorer country's economy, and because of this widening income gap, rich and better opportunities the poor, not only do they have little growth, the key point is that there's economic uncertainty. They rely on someone else that can just pack up and move, and of course the profit never gets back to them. So this creates social problems, crime, unhappiness, and of course tension that this is happening. Of course, there's also brain drain. If you are in a poor country, you want to move to another country that can allow you to develop economically. Now, with these four, what would actually be your biggest impact? It's slightly hard to argue. Okay, so you guys have to think about whether there's a cause and effect, and of course whether there's a greater smaller impact. Because impact, probably a greater small impact matters. So what matters more in the long run? Is there a long-term impact? Is there a short-term impact? Just spend 1 or 2 minutes think about this. Okay, widening income gap versus talent pool versus increased standard of living. How many countries actually do increase the standard of living, or competition? Does it really improve all the time, or how about those who get left behind? Okay, so you might want to actually think about this. And of course, last one is whether it's more positive or actually more negative.